Well, hello.
Hello, hello.
Hi there. My name is Ruby, and I am live for the topic 3 things you need to know about relationships. And I've got my friend here with me, Joe. Would
Hello,
you like to
hello.
introduce yourself? Just a little bit.
Sure. I'm Joe Martin. Ruby and I met a few months back in a class. I guess it was some sort of group
Yeah.
class. I don't know. And yeah, we done a couple YouTube or some kind of live things or videos in the past. So yeah, it's good to be back with you. I'm excited to talk about your ebook.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as you might know or not know, I've been working on an ebook, and I decided to do a few Facebook Lives just to have a conversation about that ebook. You'll be able to download that ebook. It's completely free, and I wanted to create a few Facebook Lives well, just to have the conversation also, and for people that if they have a chance to come on and ask questions during the live.
Yeah.
And just wanting to see what we can do. And yeah, and Joe popped up, and I was like, I'm just gonna also have this conversation with Joe. So how does it
Cool.
get better?
So what made you decide to write the ebook?
I never considered myself like a relationship expert, I think. So, and then suddenly there was this energy around that where a lot has happened about what I could see about how we see a relationship and what it really is. And it's also the first chapter in the book is like, what is a relationship? What does it say in the dictionary? What do we think a relationship is? And I've noticed all these different things with the energetic cords and the relationship as an entity. And if you would look at this point where, for example, two people would be in a relationship, this relationship entity is created, then people decide to break up for whatever reason and sort of leave the relationship. And then there's this relationship entity that's left there. And nobody realizes that, but it is still there. And if you look at a relationship like an entity, it's a consciousness of itself. And that also means that it sort of needs to be nurtured and it needs to be acknowledged for it to be its sparkling energy.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought about it like that?
I haven't until you said that. And it's really interesting because you think about it on an energetic level and, if two people's energies are coming together, you're essentially creating that third energy in a way. So it makes a lot of sense where it's like you're creating this new entity between two entities. So it's like, yeah, that kind of third party thing, it's very interesting. So I'm curious how that works on the back end though, when a relationship ends. Is it like, do you have to physically, maybe we're thinking about it wrong and have to really dissolve that whole relationship, or is just separating kind of the end of it?
Well, that's actually a really good question, because one of the other reasons why I wanted to write more about this was my own experience in where I was struggling with this relationship, which had already ended. And I was really looking at that from an energetic point of view. And I was looking at from the point of view as really sort of getting into the conversation with the relationship. And, the way that you could communicate with the way you and I communicate, or you could communicate with other entities or not, you could ask questions, and you can ask what it requires. And so it can ask, have you ever acknowledged me? Or it can ask, I need you to give me energy. So, for example, if just like people, our energy can be drained. So for example, it can just ask, I need some energy. Would you give me some? So, that would help. And then there was this other point where the relationship entity was really close, and I was asking for what do you require, and it told me, well, you know what? Why don't I'm all good? I feel like I'm happy now, but just push me further away. because when I'm here, I'm like too much in your space, and that is not a contribution to you. So you've given me what I needed. Just push me a little bit further away, and I'm good. And the amazing thing is that as soon as you look at those things from an energetic point of view, and you start actually acknowledging it for what it is, that allows the space for things to change in, like, in this reality, or like this 3D physicality that's there. And another example that I have is with friends that, somebody was having so many issues with a divorce, and, taking care of what happens with the children, and there were, lawsuits and things like that, and it was just getting crazy. And then we started asking questions about, the relationship and the bonds, and, all the contracts that they had. And if you notice that there's this charge on it, and if that relationship is unhappy, and if the connections, all the bonds are still in place, and there are all these judgments, and there are all these expectations, and everything that is just all the limitations that are on those relationships, it's so hard in this reality to really get things done, because the energy is not allowing it, and you're like, why is this? Why do we have like years of struggles and years in court? And, people are always asking, why is this happening? Or it's so hard, and it's just never ending.
Yeah.
It's just that nobody is looking at the energetics of what is really going on.
Well, two things came to my mind when you were talking, and the first one was, it was showing me like two people sitting there, and then like, in the relationship kind of in the middle with the energy swirling, and, looking at it from like an energetic point of view, where if you're injecting negative energy into that, it's going to swirl downwards. If you're interjecting positive, it's going to swirl upwards. And it's like, so whatever you're contributing to that is kind of where that relationship, it makes a lot of sense, thinking of it that way.
Yeah, exactly.
And oh, I forgot my second point. It'll come back to me whenever. But yeah, I just thought that was kind of interesting, seeing the energy going back and forth, and how you kind of contribute going, in both directions. And so what I was going to say to the second point was, when you have those relationships ending and people still have that energy being fed to it, I would think, it seems like a lot of times when relationships end, it's one side more than the other side. A lot of times, you'll have times where it's mutually like, all right, we're done. But a lot of times one person's still more invested than the other person. So maybe that energy swirls in the middle still, because they're still contributing energy towards that, even though the other person isn't.
Right, exactly. And that's exactly it. And what I've also noticed is that that the relationship entity can also be a nurturing aspect to perhaps the person that is not ready yet to leave the relationship. Also a very interesting way to look at it, because again, it's a consciousness of itself. And you can sort of, give each other what you require, as long as you're willing sort of to step out of the, this reality in 3D where you really want to be with a person. But looking at it from that point of view, and coming back to what you were saying about the, the spiral up and down. When you look at, for example, sort of a past relationship, and even if both, human beings don't even want to be together anymore, we were looking at why is this breakup so hard, or why do we have all these issues in court for years and years? We were looking at the relationship, and the relationship is like, you're not even acknowledging me. And I was asking questions, and he was like, yeah, I don't even want it to exist. I don't even I just want it gone. And so it got us to the point is, can you at least acknowledge that there once was a relationship, and that it's still there, and it just wants you to acknowledge it. That's it. And as soon as it was like, oh, right, and that tension sort of dissolves, because the relationship is like, oh.
Well, it's interesting, because it's like you're saying, I can see it from two different perspectives. One where there's like kids involved, where you have to have some sort of relationship regardless if you want to or not. So there's like, that exists regardless if you want it to or not. And then there's the other one where you're completely severed from other people, but when you think about that person or that relationship, there's still that, you know, in between part, like you said, where it's that energy is still there. And are you looking back negatively and feeding that, or positively, or, you know,
Right.
indifferently, however?
Yeah, but even when you're talking about kids, what came up to me, because that was also one of the things that inspired me to write this, is I had this experience where I was in a meditation. I was looking at my relationship with my daughter, and I got that she was pulling my energy. She was draining my energy.
Hmm.
And it sort of scared me a little bit, because it's like, it's something that you don't want. And then later on, I was looking at it again, and it was like absolutely right. She was a leak, if we call that. She was an energy leak. And so I looked at that, and I looked at where our energetic cord was, and I was holding her in my arm energetically, and the cord was attached to my side, and on her side it was attached to her belly button. And I was holding her like this. But right now she's 8 years old. So imagine if I would like walk around with an 8-year-old, and if I would never disconnect that cord, and she would be 27. I mean, imagine, how she would be, and also how would I be? I mean, I would, my back. I mean, my back's already killing me, so whatever that may be.
Right.
But and you tend not to really want to look at it this way. So I cut the cord. I was able to sort of put her down, and that creates space for me, and it creates space for her, and it releases all the limitations that were there, and it stopped the draining of the energy. So the leak was closed, and even in the days after that, I could just see a huge difference in her behavior also, because she's like an 8-year-old. Back then she was 7, but a 7-year-old draining your energy. I mean, I think a lot of parents might be able to relate to how kids can really drain your energy. And we tend to write it off on either the child. Some people can say it's the child, and some people can say, well, I'm really tired, or I'm just too busy. But what if it's also something else?
Yeah.
What if it has to do with everything's energy? So
Right. Well, I think that's like a hard conversation even for some people to have, because it's like, well, that's my child, and automatically it becomes defensive for a lot of people right away, because they're, that protection mode comes out, and it's like, yeah, but you gotta have your own energy at the same time as well.
absolutely, and it's completely correct what you were saying, because my first reaction was like, wait a minute. I don't want her to be the leak, or the causer of a leak or whatever. Usually,
Right.
Again, the judgment where we think those are like the bad people that are draining our energy. No,
Right.
apparently your sweet little child that you love to bits
Yeah.
can also drain your energy. It's not
Yeah.
even her fault or my fault or something that she does on purpose. It's our connection and the limitations on that connection for I don't know how many lifetimes that causes something in this reality. And
So it's interesting, when you were talking, you said that you literally, like, so when you're doing these scans or whatever you call them, or asking, are you in a meditation, or are you just like right now and you're just like, hey, tell me what I need to know? Like, how do you communicate that?
both it's
Okay.
it's different sometimes. If I really with myself, I might go in sort of a meditative state, but I think generally if I would do it in a session, it would be more of a sort of a relaxation state. I wouldn't really call it meditative, although it could. But yeah, I think it's just it could be easier. I do ask the ones that are in the session to like really choose to be present, and to really listen to what their body is telling them. Because a lot of things, especially if we look at the energetic cord, I can ask a question and I can ask them to sort of break that cord, but many people are not yet willing to break
Yeah.
that cord, because they have these attachments and these meanings to what does a bond or a cord mean to them?
Yeah.
So it's very important to like really check that are you willing to break this cord? And many times when people have just started out, it's a no.
Yeah.
And then you can break the cord, as much as you want, but if they actually don't want it, it will sort of reattach. So for me, it's very important to make clear that are you actually willing to do that? And if they're not yet, if we get a no, then I'll start asking more questions to get them to a point where they are truly willing. That is a thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So it made me wonder then, if there is that side of it where you can attach to people and being drained negatively, there would have to be the opposite too, right? Where people could attach to you and fill you up with energy, or is that not a thing? Or like, is there mutually beneficial chords, or is it always like a one-way street kind of thing?
Yeah, well, I guess if you look at it that way, well, it depends on, what you define as, also what you define as a chord. What does it mean to you? So especially looking at that way, but looking at from a point of view as, so the people sort of have a reason of not wanting to lose that connection is because they think that is the thing that connects them to someone. While if you could also have the point of view where we're all infinite beings, and if we would all sort of take up the space that we truly be, then we're this big that we are connected. We are sort of all these infinite beings. So would you rather have this connection, or would you rather choose oneness and have that, and then always know where the other one would be?
Yeah.
And so that's very different. And then that is the space from where you can contribute to each other.
Yeah.
And again, it kind of depends on what your definition is, but looking at sort of the definitions quote unquote, that I talk about in the ebook, it's like this relationship or this connection is sort of a starting point for all the projections and expectations to sort of, latch onto that. So people have these projections and expectations, and then they don't live up to it. So that means we sort of have to separate, and then we tend to make up again, but then again we have these projections and expectations, and again there is a separations judgment, because in order to really meet those projections and expectations, you need to judge whether something is right or wrong. So you get into this whole judgment part, and that's also within access consciousness. We talk a lot about destroying and uncreating the relationship and all those projections and expectations, just to sort of break free from that.
Yeah, because I think that's such a hard thing in any, not even just like romantic relationships, but friendships, anything, where it's like
everything.
You put an expectation on something and then they don't live up to it. Now you're just, I mean, that's a hard thing to regain for a lot of people once you put this expectation in your mind how something's going to be, and then it doesn't live up to it. It's like,
Yeah. Oh, so true. Yeah. And not even in like, people relationships, but even in like jobs, you come and do something, or you do an assignment, and people have those expectations and projections and everything. And it's like, yeah, and you could also sort of look at it from that point of view.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the world we're in right now, right? Is people's expectations have just become to the point, like, if you show up and do anything, we'll be happy. I mean, I get what's going on in the world too, but at the same time, it's like, man, it's just a weird dichotomy of everything that we've ended up with, but that it all plays together with that, relationship thing, where you have that expectation of this is what it used to be like, and now the new workforce is coming in, and it's like, this isn't the same as what we're used to. And so it's interesting how that can go in so many different directions.
So many directions. And it's very interesting to really have that conversations and to go everywhere, but of course, for the sake of an ebook, you sort of have to keep to a certain subject. But who knows, maybe the ebook can become like a bigger book or manual or whatever.
So is it contained to like romantic relationships, or is it just relationships like in general, like any kind of
yeah. Well, and of course, well, a lot of people relate to sort of relationship like romantic, or like with their parents or their children or whatever, because that's, I guess that's something that causes the most issues in our daily lives. But again, like you say, you can look at it from all kinds of perspectives. I mean, I just recently got out of this cool meeting that I was hosting with my team, and you could also say that, people are sort of tense and they have expectations to what, how the meeting should be and how things should flow. And then, something goes wrong, and how do you react to that? And then there's this day 2, and all the people have all these new expectations. And I was like, what the fuck? What's this? Let's just try and create all of that and all the projections and expectations, and, just keep it there. And it's sort of, it lightened up. Just being aware of everything that people are just projecting, and not like on purpose, and not at certain people, but it's just really natural for people to have expectations, and then sort of send it to each other, and then there's this whole nervous group running around.
Yeah, and that's something to be said right there, that nervousness that can permeate throughout a group when that uncertainty, you can like cut it with a knife sometimes. It's so thick
and you're like, why am I nervous? Well, is that even me? Is that even mine? No, it's not.
And that's interesting, especially people have no idea and they're just starting to feel that, like, I wasn't nervous when I came here, and now all of a sudden it's
Well, even that part, if people would just start to like really get that, like when I feel that, oh, wait a minute, it's not even mine. That's sort of the basic tool that I use, and it's also the basic tools that is explained in all the courses and all the trainings. Just saying, okay, first of all, is it yours? Let's start there, and then 99 out of 100 times, or maybe even 99.999, it's not even theirs.
Right. Well, that's been one thing that, since I've talked to you, a few different times, that's been so interesting to me, is how you've taught, like you brought up about asking yourself, or asking the situation, or asking these questions. And it's just one of those things that never even occurred to me before. And then since you said it, I've done it so many times, and I'm like, wow, it's still that, like, learning to trust the answer, is the right answer that you're getting. But like, it is, you ask a question and there's an answer, and it's like, well, did I think of that, or was that the answer? Or like, but it's such a cool tool that you don't even really think of to use, is like, well, ask it the question, ask what's going on, and you'll be surprised how many times you get the answer.
Absolutely. But also in this, it's, we don't even see that anywhere when we grow up. We're always brought up to sort of look for the answer, and to always have the answer, and to always know what you're doing before you take a step or make a choice or whatever. And what if that's not true?
Yeah. See, I'm kind of the opposite. I jump off the cliff and figure out how I'm getting down on the way down,
And has that ever been judged?
Yeah, sometimes.
Right. Yeah. And
it's that improvisation, and I think that's what a lot of life is supposed to be anyway, is us just reacting to the situations instead of trying to. Because one thing I find is, like you said, we build these expectations, we plan, we have all these thoughts in our heads of how things are going to go, and then it doesn't go that way, and it's like, well, that was a ton of wasted energy. Like, I just wasted all that energy thinking how it was supposed to be or should be, and it never was. So
exactly,
might as well just go into it and see what happens and react from there.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well, maybe we're going a little bit off topic, but no, I mean, it's just amazing, and to also have this conversation with you also about the ebook, and what else? And looking at the ebook, I'm like, is it perfect? I don't think so. Could it be better? Am I the best writer? Yeah, exactly. I don't know. The only thing that I know is that it has really contributed to me, in my life, and the way that I look at things. And even, with us having this conversation, and I know that you're sort of not, let's say, new to this world, you get things. Mm-hmm. And even when we have this conversation, you'll be like, oh my gosh, didn't even think of that,
Right.
And how many people could really benefit from information like this, and how much easier could someone's life be. And I know how much easier it made mine in so many different ways. Yeah,
Well,
and
the
it's
first thing that we talked about, and you saying, just asking the relationship what it needs or what it wants, and it's like, man, just that just kind of blew my mind right away. And I'm like, it's so simple, but it's like you don't think of that stuff ever. You know what I mean? It doesn't ever even like occur to you until somebody's like, yeah, do that, and then it works, and then you're like, well, why didn't I do this my whole life? Like,
wow, yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, that and that's it. It's like some of the things are so clear and so simple,
right?
and it's like, well, why did I just discover that? I mean,
Yeah,
it would be so
yeah,
amazing if that was just sort of common sense, which
yeah.
it is common sense, but not to most of us. And yeah,
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is, and that's why I love doing these, different interviews and different things with different people, because you hear people's different techniques that they've learned or come up with, and you're like, wow, I can't believe I never thought of that. It's so simple, but it's, brilliant at the same time.
right, right,
So
right.
very
Yeah.
cool to be able to have these conversations. So my question to you is this a series of books, or is this the only one, or what are you thinking with that?
Wow, who knows? I should look at the energy. This is a series.
Yeah.
Hmm. I would say, well, maybe I wouldn't even call it a series, but I would say there might be a sequel, or at
Mhm.
least a different shape or form or
Yeah.
whatever. But yeah, like I said, I sort of started creating it, and what else can be created from that? How does it?
Right.
Yeah, what
So
does
was
it
this
want to
like
be?
all your intuition that you wrote in this book, or was it like some channeled messages, or how did you get all the information for it?
I guess it sort of was a combination of different things that I did myself. Also some things guided by other facilitators that I was just doing, sessions. And then after a few months, I started sort of things started showing, and I started, picking things that would work for me, and it started evolving.
Hmm.
And then, yeah, just by also by asking questions, um, questions like, um, what would it look like for me? Or, what is my capacity with relationships? Like I said, in this reality, I might not even be called a relationship expert. Um, but then also, if everything is the opposite of what it appears to be, then what is my capacity? And was that even my reality? So, and I was
Well,
looking at those questions like,
yeah.
no, this is not my, then what is my reality with
Right.
relationships? And that started the whole conversations about what else is there, and this is not even really about like a relationship or being in a relationship or wanting to change your relationship. It's all about the perspective. It's all about, yeah, how do you look at things, and how do you see things for what they are? I guess that is with everything, but
Yeah.
then just fully focused on this subject. So again, yeah, what could this be? Where does this want to go into?
So how much has it changed your perspective since you started writing it?
I guess it just turned around completely.
Really?
Yeah.
So was it a lot of like hard truths that you had to come to with yourself too, where you had to kind of look at yourself in the mirror too and say, okay, I can do this better, or that sort of thing too? So it's
Yeah.
kind of a, yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, not just, I mean, yeah, also what's my part of it, without judging me and without saying that I'm doing things wrong. But we all have a part in things, and we all have a certain behavior or have had certain behaviors. And yeah, we could have all made different choices, but it was that. So what can we learn from that? It's
right.
very interesting to see. And as soon as you start like seeing it from this perspective, and like actually seeing a relationship as its own entity, and what you can do with that and accomplish with that, that is so interesting. That
Yeah.
and that can, and that way you can just talk on for hours. So we sort of need to, but it's so interesting to really look at that and how you can see that in different aspects of your life, and to go beyond that idea of a relationship, the definition that we have of being in a friendship or being in a love relationship, whatever. What
Yeah.
if, you know, there's there are so many interactions?
Yeah.
Um,
Well, one
yeah.
thing I I think your book will be good for too, is I know in the spiritual community, especially, it seems like every single person is an empath who was in a relationship with a narcissist, and everybody else is everybody else's fault. And it's like, dude, you're missing the whole point of this spiritual journey, like introspection and looking at what you could do better, not blaming everybody else for your problems. Is
Right,
that's what I was
right.
curious.
Yeah, no, that's why I said,
Yeah,
I have my part. It's not anyone's fault,
right.
and it's not even, I mean, yeah, you can go back to your childhood and go back to, bad things that have happened. What if that's not even anybody's fault?
Yeah. One thing I wanted to touch on that we were kind of discussing before we started recording, you were saying about like relationship trauma from like past lives and how that can show up. Like, can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, well, a lot of things that can happen is you could have all these contracts, agreements, that you pronounced in previous lifetimes. And if that's there energetically, that contract, that will still be there.
Mm,
Even, something simple like a marriage, till death do us part. Well, what if death doesn't part us?
mm,
What do you do?
yeah,
But also a thing that where you can, like in a previous lifetime, for example, a mother could have been somebody's daughter, and if
right.
you would have this vow saying, I will always take care of you, I will always take care of you. And then there's this next lifetime where, roles are reversed and the mother
Mm,
is suddenly the daughter. Um, but in this case, the daughter promised the mother, I will always take care of you. I mean,
ah,
there's this dependence, and sometimes people don't have a clue what's going on. And then
yeah.
you start asking questions again, do you have these vows? Do you have these contracts? And
Hmm.
what have you agreed, to do for all eternity?
Yeah.
And again, if that's the energy, then, and you just refuse to look at it, it can really show these crazy things in your life. And people are like, why is this, happening this way? Why can't I change it? And why can't I just sort of, get my freedom? Because it's the same, like I had this conversation with somebody where we saw this energetic cord, and it was sort of, it can be attached, but you can also visualize it as being sort of around your body or around your stomach or whatever. And I was saying, so imagine somebody is sort of like literally attached to a cord, but in order for that person to sort of find what he or she is looking for, they require to turn around 86 times. I don't know, look at it as a child's game. I need to turn
Yeah.
around 86 times and then I can find which direction I want to go. But if
Mm,
you're attached to this cord, you won't be able to turn around 86 times. Or you might be, but you might suffocate. So
yeah.
if you take it like that, literally, and people are like, oh right, yeah, no, that seems
Yeah.
hard.
Right. Right. It makes a lot of
So
sense. Yeah.
yeah.
That's really interesting because the past life thing fascinates me because like I always say, like I hear this like word trauma that comes up for everybody in this community and stuff, and I'm like, it doesn't resonate with me at all. Like I haven't really gone, I mean, nothing that I would consider trauma, and I'm not downplaying anybody else's by any means. I'm just saying for me personally, I don't feel like I've experienced that trauma that, when I think of what trauma is. But then I hear people talk about how it can stay with you from past lives and different things that you don't even realize. And it's like, man, well, how do we unwrap these layers, and
Right.
figure out what's going on here? How do I
I
know?
know. I know.
But what it made me think of is, and I don't know if you know the answer to this, but like, okay, say you have that mother-daughter relationship in a past life. Is there a chance that I'm in America and that daughter is in Africa and we never even meet each other in this lifetime, but there's still that like connection that, is from a past life? Is that possible? Or are you always like pretty much that same soul group of people? Do they stay together? Do you know?
Well, that's a good question to you, because when you talk about that, does it feel light when you say that?
I kind of get that it could be both, but it's like almost like you would be supposed to meet that person regardless of how far apart you live type of thing. But if you don't, I'm like, well, does that create chaos, or could that create problems if there's this like longing for somebody that you don't even know exists? Or
Right. Yeah. And then there's a question that, is that what we decide that we need to do, that we sort of have to meet that person? Or, what if you have like 10,000 lifetimes? Does it really matter that you meet in this lifetime, or
all
maybe
right,
like
yeah,
three
so that's
lifetimes
even
ahead?
more layers.
Exactly. And that's also the part where you go into where we give this meaning to the connection or the bond, because
Mhm.
what if it doesn't matter that that person doesn't show up this lifetime?
Mm,
What if
yeah.
that person or that entity chooses not to participate right now? Maybe next lifetime, maybe not. Because it's not, again, it's bigger than the connection.
So then is it just something that like subconsciously, I mean, we just need to be like, hey, we don't have any need for these other people, regardless of, yeah, we want to have these interactions, but we don't need them to be full, I guess, or our whole self in a way. Because that's what it seems like, is it's almost like it's a piece of you over here and over there and over there, and you're trying to.
Right. Yeah. And also with that part, again, if we talk about that we're all like bigger than our bodies, and we're all space, and we're all in oneness, then
Yeah.
is that entity really not with you?
Right. And that's the weird conundrum that always, and that when I channel being sometimes, and they're like we were talking to one the other day, that not to get off topic, but they were like from the ninth dimension or something. And I was super curious, like, oh, what's your planet called? What's this, what that? And they were like, what does it matter? We're all
Yeah.
one. And I was just like, well, it matters to me.
Yeah. Why do you want to know? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like so funny how people think,
Yeah. Yeah. So
Those
it's a
people are
very
so
like
funny.
human
Yeah.
thinking way, I guess,
It
compared to
is.
that.
It is. Now we're all this. I mean, look at TV, soap shows and all those things where, the love and the connection and meant to be and
Mhm.
things like that. It's like, oh my gosh, what if it is not like that at
Yeah.
all? But,
Yeah. Well, and that's
yeah,
another thing that's interesting you brought up, is with like TV and movies and their wildly entertaining expectations of what love and romance are supposed to be. And then they put
exactly.
these expectations into kids growing up, and it's like, I mean,
I mean, isn't that like this major impact on our point of view? I mean,
yeah,
like what's
I mean that,
supposed to be? Yeah.
and you combine that with like pornography, to be honest with you, like you have these kids that have these expectations of what life is supposed to be, and it's like, dude, they are so
Yeah.
confused and lost, like it's nothing.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, on
Yeah.
that note, yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, yeah, I mean, I'd love having this conversation with you, and I
absolutely.
mean, if we can do it again, we should definitely do
Yeah.
that. I would just say that, if any of you watching it now or maybe watching in the future is interested to just have a look at the ebook and just try it out. I mean, just download it and see if it works for you. If it doesn't,
Yeah.
then, just let it go.
Yeah.
But like I said, having this conversation with you, and I'm gonna have a few, gonna have a few others as well.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think it's just so interesting.
Oh, it
Yeah.
surely is. And thanks so much for having me on to be able to talk about it with you. And I'm excited to read it myself as soon as I get a second here. So
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
definitely.
Yeah, very busy with your. I'm excited to learn more about your book.
Yeah.
And also for you guys, I don't know if you know this, but Joe has his own YouTube channel and has these very interesting videos that I love to watch. So we
Thank
can
you.
also put maybe your channel. I'll put it in the description. So if
Okay,
people
cool.
want to find it, we can do that. But
Appreciate it.
thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me.
Okay, talk to you soon.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye bye.